The woman's hand reached out before her mind could catch up, fingers gently straightening the CEO's crooked bow tie as he stood in the lobby of the Grand Hotel. And the moment her fingertips brushed against the silk fabric, everything in Bennett Mathison's carefully controlled world tilted slightly off its axis. "Sorry," Tessa Remington said immediately, stepping back as if she had just touched something forbidden. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she realized what she had done. It was crooked, and I have this thing about symmetry." Bennett looked down at the petite brunette standing before him, her own elegant navy dress suggesting she was here for the same pharmaceutical industry gala he was about to endure. Her dark eyes were wide with mortification, and something about the genuine concern in her expression made him smile despite himself. "Thank you," he said, his voice deeper than she expected. "I have been struggling with this thing for 20 minutes. She laughed, a soft sound that seemed to ease the tension in her shoulders. "Bow ties are tricky. My dad used to wear them to every formal event, and I became the official family tie fixer by the time I was 12. "Then I am grateful for your expertise," Bennett replied, adjusting his cufflinks. Up close, he could see the delicate freckles across her nose, the way her hair was pinned up but small tendrils had escaped to frame her face. She was beautiful in an understated way that made him want to keep looking. "Are you attending the gala?" she asked, gesturing toward the ballroom doors where guests were beginning to filter in. "Unfortunately," he said, then caught himself. "I mean, yes, same, unfortunately and yes." Her smile was genuine now, reaching her eyes. "These things always feel like a marathon of small talk and forced networking." "Exactly." Bennett found himself relaxing in a way he rarely did at these events. "I am Bennett by all means. Tessa." She extended her hand, and when he shook it, he noticed how small and warm her fingers felt in his palm. "I work in research and development for Callaway Pharmaceuticals. Tonight is basically required attendance for anyone who wants to keep their job." Bennett knew Callaway Pharmaceuticals well. It was one of the mid-sized companies his own corporation had been considering for acquisition. He opened his mouth to mention this, then stopped himself. The moment felt too pleasant to complicate with business matters. "I understand that feeling," he said instead. "Shall we head in together? Safety in numbers and all that." Tessa hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. "Why not? At least I will know one friendly face in there." They walked toward the ballroom entrance, and Bennett noticed several of his executives doing double takes as they spotted him chatting casually with someone they did not recognize. He ignored their curious glances, focusing instead on what Tessa was saying about her work developing new treatments for autoimmune disorders. "It is slow going," she explained as they paused at the entrance, taking in the elaborate decorations and the sea of formally dressed guests. "But when you finally see a treatment work, when you know you have helped create something that will actually improve lives, it makes all the late nights worth it." The passion in her voice struck something in Bennett. He had spent so long focused on profit margins and market share that he had almost forgotten what it felt like to talk about work with genuine enthusiasm for the impact it could have. "That must be incredibly fulfilling," he said. Before Tessa could respond, a tall woman in a red dress approached them, her eyes lighting up when she saw Tessa. "There you are. I have been looking everywhere for you." "Monica, hi," Tessa said, her tone friendly but slightly resigned. "This is Bennett." "Bennett, this is Monica Chen, my lab partner and best friend." Monica shook Bennett's hand with a knowing smile that suggested she was already making assumptions about their relationship. "Nice to meet you. Tessa, I need to steal you for just a minute. Dr. Harrison is here and he was asking about our latest trial results." Tessa glanced at Bennett apologetically. "I should go talk to him. He is one of our major supporters." "Of course," Bennett said, trying to hide his disappointment. "It was lovely meeting you, Tessa." "You too." She smiled at him one more time before Monica pulled her into the crowd. Bennett watched her go, noting the graceful way she moved through the throng of people, the way she seemed to light up when greeting colleagues. Then she disappeared around a corner, swallowed by the massive crowd, and he felt an unexpected sense of loss. The evening progressed as these events always did. Bennett made his rounds, shaking hands with board members and investors, discussing market trends and regulatory challenges. His company, Mathison Biotech, was one of the largest pharmaceutical corporations in the world, and as its CEO, his presence at industry events was both expected and scrutinized. People approached him with pitches and proposals, with flattery and barely concealed ambition. He handled it all with practiced ease, his responses polite but non-committal. But through it all, his eyes kept searching the crowd for Tessa. He spotted her once during the cocktail hour, laughing at something an older gentleman was saying. The sound of her laughter carried across the room, and Bennett found himself moving in that direction before he caught himself. What was he doing? He had just met this woman. There was no reason for this pull he felt toward her. During dinner, he was seated at the head table with other industry leaders. The conversation was predictable, oscillating between shop talk and gossip about various mergers and acquisitions. Bennett participated when required, but found his attention drifting to the other tables, trying to spot that navy dress, that dark hair pinned up with escaping tendrils. "You seem distracted tonight," Margaret Foster, the CEO of a rival company, observed from his right. She was in her 60s, sharp-eyed and shrewd. "That is not like you, Bennett. Just a long week," he replied smoothly. Margaret did not sound convinced. "Or perhaps you are thinking about that lovely young woman you walked in with. I saw you two talking quite animatedly." Bennett felt heat creep up his neck, something that had not happened since he was a teenager. "Just met her tonight, actually." "Is that so?" Margaret's smile was knowing. "Well, she works for Callaway from what I hear, researcher in their autoimmune division. Brilliant, apparently. Won some award last year for her work." This information only made Bennett more curious. He wanted to know everything about Tessa Remington. What had drawn her to pharmaceutical research? What did she do when she was not in a lab? What made her laugh like that, with such unguarded joy? After dinner, there was dancing. A live band played standards and contemporary songs arranged to sound elegant and appropriate for the venue. Bennett danced with Margaret because it was expected, then with the wife of his chief financial officer, then with a board member's daughter who was clearly angling for something more than a professional connection. He remained polite but distant, and all the while, his eyes scanned the crowd. Finally, he saw her. Tessa was standing near one of the tall windows that overlooked the city, holding a glass of champagne and looking out at the lights. She was alone for the first time all evening, and Bennett moved toward her before he could second-guess himself. "Hiding?" he asked as he approached. Tessa turned, and her face broke into a smile when she recognized him. "Caught me. I needed a breather. You, the same." He stood beside her, looking out at the view. "It is a beautiful night." "It is." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Tessa spoke again. "I have to admit, I have been wondering about you all evening." Bennett's heart rate picked up. "Oh, you never told me what you do, who you work for." This was the moment. He should tell her. It was better to be upfront. But something made him hesitate. For once in his adult life, someone was talking to him without the filter of his position and wealth. Tessa had no idea who he was, and that felt like a precious gift he was not quite ready to give up. "I work in the industry," he said vaguely. mostly on the business side of things. It was not technically a lie, just an enormous omission. Tessa nodded, accepting this explanation. Do you enjoy it? The question surprised him. People rarely asked if he enjoyed his work. They assumed he must, given his success. Sometimes, he answered honestly. It can be fulfilling to build something, to see a company grow and succeed, but it can also be isolating. You make decisions that affect thousands of people and you have to live with the weight of that. That sounds lonely, Tessa said softly. It can be. He looked at her, struck again by how easy it was to talk to this woman he had just met. What about you? Do you enjoy your work? Most days, yes. She took a sip of her champagne. Today was actually particularly good. We got some promising results on a treatment we have been developing for lupus. It is still early stages, but if it works the way we hope, it could significantly improve quality of life for a lot of people. That is amazing, Tessa. She ducked her head, pleased but slightly embarrassed by the compliment. It is a team effort, but thank you. The band started playing a slower song and Bennett made a decision. Would you like to dance? Tessa looked surprised but nodded. I would like that. He led her to the dance floor, acutely aware of every point where their bodies touched. His hand rested on the small of her back, and she placed her hand on his shoulder. They moved together easily as if they had done this before. You are a good dancer, Tessa observed. Mandatory lessons as a child, Bennett admitted. My mother insisted that a gentleman needed to know how to waltz properly. Smart woman. They danced through the entire song and Bennett wished it would never end. When it finally did, they stayed on the floor for the next one, neither wanting to break the spell. Can I ask you something? Tessa said after a while. Anything. Why did you seem so relieved when I fixed your bow tie earlier? You looked almost grateful to have an excuse to talk to someone. Bennett considered his answer carefully. These events can be overwhelming. Everyone wants something from you. Everyone has an agenda, but you just wanted to fix a crooked bow tie. There was something refreshing about that. I do not have an agenda, Tessa confirmed. Well, except maybe finding decent food and avoiding my ex-boyfriend who apparently also works in the industry and might be here somewhere. Ex-boyfriend. Bennett found himself intensely interested in this information. Ancient history, Tessa assured him. We broke up 8 months ago. He wanted me to be less focused on my career, more focused on being arm candy at events like this. Turns out I am not great at being decorative. His loss, Bennett said firmly. Tessa laughed. You are good for my ego. They danced 2 more songs before Monica appeared, looking apologetic. Tessa, I am so sorry, but we need to go. Dr. Harrison wants to continue our discussion at his hotel and he is leaving in 10 minutes. Tessa's face fell and Bennett felt his stomach drop with disappointment. Right now, I know, terrible timing. Tessa looked at Bennett, genuine regret in her eyes. I have to go. This meeting could mean significant funding for our research. I understand, Bennett said, even though every fiber of his being wanted to ask her to stay. Work comes first. Can I? Tessa hesitated. Can I give you my number? Maybe we could get coffee sometime. Relief flooded through him. I would really like that. They exchanged phones and quickly entered their information. Monica was practically bouncing with impatience, and Tessa gave Bennett one last apologetic smile before hurrying away with her friend. Bennett stood on the dance floor, feeling unmoored. Around him, couples continued to sway to the music, but he had no interest in dancing anymore. He pulled out his phone and looked at the contact information Tessa had entered. Her number, her email, even her address at Callaway Pharmaceuticals. He should text her right away, confirm their coffee date. But something held him back. He needed to tell her who he really was before this went any further. It was only fair. Bennett made his way through the crowd, nodding at acquaintances but not stopping to chat. He found a quiet corner near the coat check and pulled up his phone again. He started typing a message, then deleted it. Started again, deleted again. Mr. Mathison. His assistant, David, appeared at his elbow. The car is ready whenever you want to leave. Already. Bennett checked his watch and was surprised to find it was nearly 11. The evening had flown by. Yes, sir. Also, the Peterson deal came through. The contracts were signed an hour ago. It was good news. The Peterson deal was worth hundreds of millions and had been months in the making. Bennett should have felt triumphant. Instead, he just felt tired. Good work, David. Let us head out. In the car ride home, Bennett stared at his phone, Tessa's contact information glowing on the screen. He should text her. He would text her. Tomorrow, after he figured out how to explain who he was without making it weird. But the next morning, with the clarity of daylight and 3 cups of coffee, Bennett realized the full complexity of the situation. He was the CEO of Mathison Biotech, a company currently in negotiations to acquire Callaway Pharmaceuticals. Tessa worked for Callaway. If the acquisition went through, and she found out he had known and not told her, she would feel betrayed. Worse, she might think he had been using her to get insider information about her company. The thought made him feel sick. Bennett called his chief counsel, Richard Brennan, into his office. Richard was 62, had been with the company for 30 years, and was one of the few people Bennett truly trusted. "We need to talk about the Callaway acquisition," Bennett said without preamble. Richard settled into one of the leather chairs across from Bennett's desk. "What about it?" "Everything is progressing smoothly. We should have the deal finalized within 6 weeks. I met someone," Bennett said abruptly. "At the gala last night. She works for Callaway, in research and development." Richard's eyebrows rose. "I see, and this is a problem because I did not tell her who I was. She has no idea I am the CEO of the company that is about to acquire her employer. Bennett, you are not required to disclose your position to every person you meet. It is more than that." Bennett ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "I like her, Richard. I really like her, and I want to see where this could go, but I cannot do that while hiding something this significant." Richard was quiet for a moment, processing. "You have a few options. You could tell her immediately and hope she understands. You could wait until after the acquisition is finalized and then explain, or you could walk away before things get complicated. I do not want to walk away. Then you need to tell her. Soon." Richard leaned forward. "But Bennett, be prepared for the possibility that she will not take it well. You are in a position of significant power, both personally and professionally. Some people will struggle with that dynamic." Bennett knew Richard was right, but the thought of never seeing Tessa again was worse than the thought of her potential anger. That afternoon, he texted her. "Hi, it's Bennett from the gala. Are you free for coffee tomorrow?" Her response came within minutes. "Hi, yes, I would love that. There is a place near my office called Rosie's. Does 3 p.m. work? Perfect. See you then." Bennett spent the next 24 hours alternating between anticipation and anxiety. He rehearsed different ways to tell her the truth, but none of them sounded right. How did you casually mention you were a billionaire CEO who happened to be acquiring your date's company? He arrived at Rosie's 15 minutes early and chose a quiet table in the back corner. The cafe was charming, with exposed brick walls and mismatched furniture that gave it a cozy, lived-in feel. Nothing like the sterile corporate coffee shops he usually frequented. Tessa arrived exactly on time, looking beautiful in jeans and a simple green sweater that brought out the hints of gold in her brown eyes. She smiled when she saw him, and Bennett felt that same pull from the gala, that magnetic attraction he could not explain. "Hey," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "I already ordered at the counter. Hope that is okay, of course. He had done the same, needing something to do with his hands during the wait. They made small talk while waiting for their drinks, discussing the gala and laughing about some of the more pretentious attendees. When their coffees arrived, Tessa wrapped her hands around her mug and looked at Bennett with open curiosity. "So tell me about yourself," she said. "I realized at the gala that we covered a lot of surface topics, but I do not really know much about you." This was his opening. Bennett took a deep breath. "There is something I need to tell you, something I should have mentioned at the gala." Tessa's expression shifted to concern. "Okay. That sounds serious." "I was not entirely forthcoming about my work." He forced himself to meet her eyes. "I do not just work in the pharmaceutical industry. I am the CEO of Mathison Biotech." The color drained from Tessa's face. She set down her coffee mug carefully, as if afraid she might drop it. "You are Bennett Mathison." "The Bennett Mathison?" "Yes, the CEO of the company that is currently trying to acquire Callaway Pharmaceuticals." So she knew about the acquisition. That made this both easier and harder. "Yes." Tessa sat back in her chair, her expression unreadable. "Why did you not tell me at the gala?" "Because you were talking to me like I was a person, not a position," Bennett said honestly. "And it felt good. I know that is selfish, but it is the truth." "Were you trying to get information about Callaway? Is that what this is?" Her voice was calm, but Bennett could see the hurt in her eyes. "No, absolutely not." He leaned forward, needing her to believe him. "Tessa, I have not asked you a single thing about your company beyond what you volunteered. This has nothing to do with business." "But it affects me," she said quietly. "If your company acquires mine, my entire job could change. My research could be shut down. My team could be dismantled. And you knew that while I was standing there talking about how much my work means to me." "I know. And I am sorry I did not tell you immediately. I should have." Tessa was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee. Bennett waited, his heart pounding. Finally, she looked up. "I appreciate you telling me now," she said, "but I need to think about this, about whether I can trust you." "I understand. I should go." She stood, gathering her purse. "Thank you for the honesty, even if it came late." Bennett watched her walk out of the cafe, and it felt like watching something precious slip through his fingers. He sat there for a long time after she left, his coffee growing cold, wondering if he had just ruined the best thing that had happened to him in years. Back at his office, Bennett threw himself into work with unusual intensity. He reviewed reports, attended meetings, made decisions about staffing and strategy. But his mind kept drifting back to the look on Tessa's face when she realized who he was. That evening, David poked his head into Bennett's office. "You have been here for 12 hours. Maybe time to call it a day." "I am fine." "You have been saying that all day, but you approved the Henderson proposal, which you specifically said last week you wanted to reject." Bennett looked down at the papers in front of him, realizing David was right. "Cancel that approval. Send it back to Henderson with the notes I sent previously." "Already done." David came into the office and closed the door. "Want to talk about what is really going on?" Bennett and David had worked together for 5 years. In that time, David had proven himself to be not just competent but genuinely caring about Bennett's well-being. If anyone could offer advice, it was him. "I met someone," Bennett said, "and I managed to mess it up before it even started." He told David the whole story. When he finished, David whistled low. "That is complicated, I am aware, but not impossible." David sat down. "If she is as smart as you say, she will understand why you hesitated to tell her at the gala. And if she is as genuine, she will appreciate that you told her before things went further." "She looked hurt, David, like I had betrayed her." "Give her time. She needs to process. This is a lot to take in." Bennett nodded, knowing David was right but hating the uncertainty of waiting. 3 days passed with no word from Tessa. Bennett checked his phone constantly, hoping for a text or call. He drafted messages to her multiple times but deleted them all. He had said his piece. Now the next move had to be hers. On the 4th day, Richard came into his office with news. Callaway is getting cold feet about the acquisition. Their board is concerned about job security for their researchers. "What are you proposing?" Bennett asked, though his mind was already working through possibilities. "We need to show good faith. Maybe guarantee that the research division will remain intact for at least 3 years. Protect the jobs and projects currently underway." It was a reasonable business decision, but Bennett knew it was also the right thing to do. People like Tessa were doing important work. That should not be casualties of corporate expansion. "Do it," Bennett said. "Draft the guarantees and make them ironclad. I want legal protections that cannot be dissolved without majority board approval." Richard looked surprised but pleased. "This will cost us some flexibility." "I do not care. Those researchers are assets. We should be protecting them, not making them feel expendable." As Richard left to draft the new terms, Bennett wondered if Tessa would ever know about this decision. Would she understand that she had influenced it? That meeting her had reminded him that behind every profit and loss statement were real people with real passion for their work. That evening, as Bennett was finally packing up to go home, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. His heart leapt before he realized it could not be Tessa. He already had her number saved, but when he opened the message, he saw it was from Monica Chen. "Hi, Mr. Mathison. This is Monica, Tessa's friend from the Gala. I hope it is okay that I looked up your contact info. I wanted you to know that Tessa has been miserable since your coffee meeting. She wants to trust you, but she is scared. She has been hurt before by someone who put their career above her. Just thought you should know. Also, she is working late at the lab tonight, Building C, 3rd floor at Callaway, in case you wanted to do something grand and romantic. No pressure, though." Bennett read the message 3 times, his pulse quickening. This was either a terrible idea or the best chance he was going to get. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. Callaway Pharmaceuticals was a 40-minute drive from Mathison Biotech headquarters. Bennett made it in 30, his mind racing the entire way. What was he going to say? How was he going to convince Tessa to give him a real chance? The Callaway campus was quiet at 8 in the evening, most employees having gone home for the day. Bennett found Building C and made his way to the 3rd floor, following the sound of music down a hallway. He found Tessa in a lab, hunched over a microscope, a pair of glasses perched on her nose that she had not been wearing at the gala or the coffee shop. She looked adorable. Bennett knocked gently on the doorframe. Tessa looked up and her eyes widened when she saw him. "Bennett, what are you doing here?" "Monica texted me," he admitted. "Told me you were working late. I hope it is okay that I came." Tessa removed her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose. "Monica needs to learn boundaries." "Do you want me to leave?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, I have been thinking about you, about everything you said." Bennett stepped into the lab, careful not to disturb any of the equipment. "I have been thinking about you too. Constantly, if I am being honest. Bennett, I want to trust you, I really do, but you have to understand how difficult this is for me. My ex, the one I mentioned at the gala, he was so focused on climbing the corporate ladder that I became an afterthought. He would cancel dates for meetings, choose networking events over my birthday, constantly check his phone during dinner. I swore I would not date someone who was married to their job again. And you are not just married to your job. You are the job." "You are right," Bennett said. "My work is a huge part of my life, but that does not mean there is not room for other things, for other people. How can you be sure? You run a billion-dollar company. The demands on your time must be insane. They are, Bennett admitted, but I get to decide what my priorities are. And Tessa, I know we barely know each other, but I would like the chance to make you one of those priorities. Tessa was quiet, looking down at the lab bench. I have been doing research on you. Did you know that? Bennett smiled despite himself. I would expect nothing less from a scientist. You are worth $3.2 billion. You have been named one of the most influential people in healthcare 3 years running. You sit on the boards of 5 major organizations. You are photographed at charity events with models and actresses. She finally looked up at him. Why would someone like you be interested in someone like me? Because you fixed my bow tie, Bennett said simply. Because you talked about your work with genuine passion. Because you made me laugh. Because when I am around you, I feel like myself instead of the persona I have to put on for everyone else. He moved closer. Tessa, I have dated models and actresses. I have been set up with heiresses and entrepreneurs. None of them made me search a crowded gala for hours just to catch another glimpse of them. None of them made me drive 40 minutes after a 12-hour workday just for a chance to explain myself. You did. Tears welled in Tessa's eyes and she brushed them away impatiently. You barely know me. Then let me get to know you. Let me take you to dinner. A real dinner, not coffee where I am dropping bombshells about my identity. Let me show you that I can balance work and a personal life. Give me a chance to prove that I am worth the risk. What about the acquisition? What happens to my job? I pushed through guarantees today. Your research division will be protected for at least 3 years, with full funding and autonomy. Whatever happens between us personally, that will not change. I promise you. Tessa stared at him for a long moment. Bennett could practically see her analytical mind working through all the variables, weighing the risks and rewards. Finally, she spoke. Okay, let's try dinner. One dinner, and we see how it goes from there. Relief flooded through Bennett so intensely he felt lightheaded. Thank you, you will not regret this. I hope not. But she was smiling now, a small, tentative smile that made Bennett want to pull her into his arms. He restrained himself. They would get there, but first he needed to earn her trust. When are you free? He asked. Tomorrow night. Perfect. I will pick you up at 7. Bennett took her to one of his favorite restaurants, a small Italian place in a neighborhood far from the usual haunts of the city's elite. The owner, Marco, greeted Bennett warmly and showed them to a quiet table in the corner. You come here often? Tessa asked, looking around at the cozy space with its checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. Once a month or so. Marco's family has run this place for 3 generations. The food is incredible and nobody bothers me here. Is that a common problem, people bothering you? More than you would think. Everyone wants something, or they want to tell me about their business idea, or they want a selfie for social media. He shrugged. It comes with the territory, but it gets exhausting. Tessa nodded slowly. I never thought about that aspect of being successful. The loss of privacy. It is a trade-off. I am privileged in countless ways, but anonymity is not one of them. He smiled at her across the table. Which is why that moment at the gala, when you had no idea who I was, felt so refreshing. I still cannot believe I just walked up and fixed your bow tie like that, Tessa said, shaking her head. What was I thinking? I am very glad you did. They ordered dinner, and as they ate, the conversation flowed easily. Tessa told him about growing up in Vermont, the youngest of 3 sisters. Her father was a high school science teacher who had inspired her love of research. Her mother was a librarian who insisted all her daughters be well-read and curious about the world. They sound wonderful, Bennett said. They are. What about your family? Bennett's expression grew more guarded. My parents are retired in California. They built Mathison Biotech from the ground up, and I took over as CEO 5 years ago when my father had a heart attack. It was earlier than anyone planned, but he needed to step back and focus on his health. That must have been a lot of pressure. It was terrifying, Bennett admitted. I was 32 and suddenly responsible for thousands of employees and billions in assets. I made mistakes at first. Some costly ones, but I learned. Do you enjoy it, leading the company? It was the same question she had asked at the gala, but this time Bennett thought more carefully about his answer. I enjoy building things. I enjoy the challenge of problem solving on a massive scale. But sometimes I wonder what my life would have looked like if I had chosen a different path. Like what? I wanted to be a doctor when I was younger. I was pre-med in college before switching to business. Sometimes I think about the direct impact I could have had working with patients instead of running a corporation. But you have an impact now, Tessa pointed out. The drugs your company develops, the treatments you fund, that reaches far more people than any individual doctor could treat. That is what I tell myself. Bennett smiled. Thank you for saying it. They talked for hours, long after their plates were cleared. Marco brought them complimentary dessert and espresso, beaming at the way Bennett was so obviously entranced with his companion. When they finally left the restaurant, it was nearly midnight. Bennett walked Tessa to her car and they stood in the cool night air, neither quite ready for the evening to end. I had a really good time, Tessa said. So did I. Can I see you again? Yes. No hesitation this time, and Bennett's heart soared. He wanted to kiss her. The urge was almost overwhelming, but instead he took her hand and raised it to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Good night, Tessa. Good night, Bennett. He watched her drive away, already planning their next date. Over the following weeks, Bennett and Tessa fell into a rhythm. They saw each other twice a week, sometimes for dinner, sometimes for walks through the city parks, once for a cooking class that had them both laughing until they cried when Bennett somehow set his apron on fire. With each date, Tessa opened up more. She told him about her failed engagement in graduate school, about the abortion she had at 26 when she was not ready to be a mother, about her fear that she was too focused on her career to ever have a successful relationship. Bennett shared his own vulnerabilities in return. He talked about the loneliness of his position, the way people treated him differently once they knew his net worth. He confessed that he had not been in a serious relationship in over 3 years because dating had become transactional. Women interested in his money and status rather than who he actually was as a person. I do not care about your money, Tessa told him one evening as they walked along the waterfront. I mean, obviously it is impressive and it is part of who you are, but it is not why I like you. Why do you like me? Bennett asked, genuinely curious. Tessa thought about it. You listen. Really listen. You ask questions and remember the answers. You make me laugh. You are kind to waiters and parking attendants and everyone you encounter, not just people who can do something for you. And you see me as a person, not just a woman you are dating. You care about my work and my goals. Those should be baseline requirements, Bennett said. You would think, but they are not as common as they should be. Bennett stopped walking and turned to face her. They were alone on this section of the waterfront, the city lights glittering on the water behind them. Tessa, I need to tell you something. She looked up at him, her expression open and trusting in a way that made his chest tight. Okay. I am falling for you. Hard. And it scares me because we have not known each other that long and I do not want to move too fast and overwhelm you. But I also do not want to pretend I feel less than I do. Tessa was quiet for a moment that felt like an eternity. Then she stepped closer, reaching up to cup his face with both hands. I am falling for you too, she whispered. Bennett kissed her then, finally, after weeks of restraint. Her lips were soft and warm, and she made a small sound of surprise that quickly became a sigh of pleasure. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her closer, and she threaded her fingers through his hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Tessa laughed shakily. "Wow." "Yeah," Bennett agreed. "Wow." They stood there holding each other as the water lapped against the shore and the city bustled behind them. Bennett felt something slot into place in his chest, a sense of rightness he had been searching for without realizing it. "Stay with me tonight," he said softly. "No expectations. I just want to fall asleep with you in my arms." Tessa nodded against his chest. Okay. Bennett's penthouse apartment was everything Tessa expected and nothing she expected at the same time. Yes, it was enormous and beautifully appointed with stunning views of the city. But it was also surprisingly cozy, with overstuffed furniture and bookshelves packed with well-worn paperbacks and framed photos of family and friends. "This is not what I pictured," Tessa admitted, looking around. "What did you picture?" "I do not know. Something more sterile, more obviously expensive," Bennett laughed. "I spend enough time in sterile corporate spaces. I wanted my home to actually feel like a home." He gave her a tour, showing her the kitchen where he admitted he rarely cooked, the guest rooms that sat mostly empty, the office where he sometimes worked from home. His bedroom was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows that made Tessa feel like she was floating above the city. "The view is incredible," she breathed. "It is even better in the morning," Bennett said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Stay and see it with me." Tessa leaned back against him, feeling safe and desired in equal measure. "I would like that." They got ready for bed with an intimacy that felt both new and familiar. Bennett lent her a T-shirt to sleep in, and Tessa washed her face with products from her purse. When she came out of the bathroom, Bennett was already in bed, the covers pulled back invitingly. Tessa climbed in beside him, and he immediately pulled her close. She rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady thrum of his heartbeat. "Thank you for trusting me," Bennett said into the darkness. "Thank you for being worth trusting." They fell asleep tangled together, and when Tessa woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through the windows, she felt more content than she had in years. Bennett was already awake, watching her with soft eyes. "Good morning." "Good morning." She stretched cat-like. "You were right. The view is even better in the morning." "I was not talking about the city," Bennett said, and Tessa blushed. They made breakfast together, Bennett proving surprisingly competent with scrambled eggs while Tessa handled the toast and coffee. They ate on the balcony, wrapped in blankets against the morning chill, talking about everything and nothing. "I need to tell Monica about us," Tessa said eventually. "She has been pestering me for details ever since she found out about our first dinner." "Tell her whatever you want," Bennett said. "I am not trying to keep this a secret. Even though dating you might make things weird at work, people will make assumptions. Let them. Anyone who knows you will know you got your position through talent and hard work, not through dating anyone." Tessa nodded, but Bennett could see the worry in her eyes. "What is it?" he asked. "I just do not want people to think less of me. I have worked so hard to be taken seriously in my field. And you will continue to be taken seriously. You are brilliant at what you do, Tessa. That does not change because of who you are dating. You are very confident about that. I am confident in you." Those simple words made Tessa's eyes well with tears. She set down her coffee and moved to sit in Bennett's lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I really like you," she said against his shoulder. "I really like you too," he replied, holding her tight. The next few months were a whirlwind. The acquisition of Callaway Pharmaceuticals went through, and as promised, Bennett ensured that the research division remained intact and fully funded. Tessa received a promotion, heading up the autoimmune research team with increased resources and authority. Some colleagues made comments, suggesting her relationship with Bennett had influenced the decision. Tessa addressed it head-on in a team meeting, presenting her credentials and her research results, and making it clear that anyone who had concerns about her qualifications was welcome to review her published work and awards. The gossip died down after that. Bennett and Tessa navigated the challenges of their relationship with surprising ease. Yes, his schedule was demanding, but he made time for her. He left board meetings early to attend her research presentations. He learned to turn off his phone during dinner. He showed up at her apartment at midnight after long days, just to hold her while she fell asleep. Tessa learned to navigate Bennett's world too. She attended charity galas and corporate dinners, holding her own in conversations with wealthy donors and industry leaders. She met his parents, who flew in from California and immediately adored her. His mother pulled Bennett aside at one point and whispered, "Do not let this one go." Bennett had no intention of letting her go. 6 months into their relationship, Bennett took Tessa back to the hotel where they had first met. The pharmaceutical industry was holding another gala, and this time they arrived together. As they stood in the lobby, Bennett adjusted his bow tie nervously. Tessa laughed and reached up to fix it, just like she had that first night. "Some things never change," she teased. "I wore a bow tie specifically so you would have to fix it," Bennett admitted. "You are terrible. You love it." Tessa sobered slightly, looking up at him with serious eyes. "I do love it. I love you, actually." It was the first time either of them had said it out loud. Bennett's breath caught. "I love you too," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "So much, Tessa, you have no idea." "I think I have some idea," she said, smiling. They kissed there in the lobby, ignoring the guests streaming past them toward the ballroom. When they finally broke apart, Bennett took her hand. "There is something I want to show you," he said, leading her toward the elevators instead of the ballroom. "Where are we going? You will see." They rode up to the roof, where Bennett had arranged for a private setup. String lights were draped across the space, and a small table was set with dinner for two. Beyond the edge of the roof, the city sprawled out in all directions, a million points of light against the darkening sky. "Bennett," Tessa breathed, "this is beautiful." "I wanted to do something special," he said, "to mark the occasion of where we met." They sat down to dinner, and as they ate, Bennett found his nerves building. He had planned this for weeks, going over every detail to make sure it was perfect. After dessert, he stood and extended his hand to Tessa. "Dance with me." Soft music was playing from hidden speakers, the same song they had danced to at the first gala. Tessa came into his arms easily, naturally, and they swayed together under the stars. "I have been thinking about that night a lot lately," Bennett said as they moved. "About how you fixed my bow tie and changed my entire life in the span of about 30 seconds. "I did not change your life," Tessa protested. "You did. You absolutely did." He pulled back slightly so he could look at her. "Before I met you, I was going through the motions. Work, events, obligations. Everything felt hollow. And then you walked up to me and fixed my tie, and suddenly everything shifted. You made me remember what it felt like to connect with someone. To want something beyond my next business deal." "Bennett," Tessa said softly, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I searched for you the entire night of that gala," Bennett continued. "Every time I lost sight of you in the crowd, I felt this panic, like I might never find you again. And when you left early, I thought I had missed my chance. But then you gave me your number, and I got a second chance. A chance to show you who I really was. A chance to fall completely in love with you." He pulled a small box from his pocket and lowered himself to one knee. Tessa gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Tessa Remington, you are the smartest, kindest, most passionate person I have ever met. You challenge me and support me in equal measure. You make me laugh and you make me think. You make me want to be better, do better. I cannot imagine my life without you in it, and I do not want to try. Will you marry me? He opened the box to reveal a ring, an emerald-cut diamond set in platinum with smaller stones along the band. It was elegant and classic, much like Tessa herself. Tessa was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she nodded vigorously. Yes, she managed to choke out. Yes, of course, yes. Bennett stood and slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that felt like a promise and a celebration all at once. When they broke apart, Tessa was laughing through her tears. I cannot believe you did all this, she said, gesturing at the rooftop setup. You deserve grand romantic gestures, Bennett said. You deserve everything. They stayed on the roof for hours, talking about their future. Where they would live when they would get married, how many children they wanted. Everything that had seemed so uncertain when they first met now felt clear and inevitable. I want you to know something, Tessa said at one point. I am proud to be with you. Not because of your money or your position, but because of who you are as a person. You are a good man, Bennett Mathison. You make me want to be a good man, Bennett replied. You inspire me, Tessa. The way you talk about your work, the difference you want to make in the world. It reminds me why we do what we do. It is not just about profit margins. It is about helping people. Look at us, Tessa said with a watery laugh. Getting all philosophical on our engagement night. We can be philosophical and happy at the same time, Bennett pointed out. I suppose we can. Eventually, they made their way down to the gala, making a brief appearance so Bennett could fulfill his obligations. When people asked about Tessa's ring, she showed it off proudly. The news spread quickly through the crowd, and by the end of the night, they had received dozens of congratulations. But the best part was standing with Tessa on the edge of the dance floor, watching couples sway to the music, and knowing that she was his and he was hers. That they had found each other in a crowd of hundreds, and somehow made it work despite all the complications and challenges. What are you thinking about? Tessa asked, noticing his distant expression. How lucky I am, Bennett said simply. How close I came to missing this, to missing you. But you did not miss me. I fixed your tie, remember? I was not going to let you go unnoticed. Bennett laughed and pulled her close. Best bow tie malfunction of my life. They were married 6 months later in a ceremony that managed to be both intimate and grand. Tessa's family flew in from Vermont, and Bennett's parents came from California. Monica was the maid of honor, and David served as Bennett's best man. The ceremony took place in a botanical garden, surrounded by flowers and greenery, with only their closest friends and family in attendance. Tessa wore a simple ivory dress that made her look like something out of a dream, and when Bennett saw her walking down the aisle, he had to blink back tears. She was so beautiful, and she was choosing him. After everything, she was choosing to build a life with him. The vows they exchanged were traditional but heartfelt. Bennett promised to love and cherish Tessa, to support her dreams and to build new dreams together. Tessa promised to be his partner in all things, in joy and in challenge, for all the days of their lives. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Bennett kissed Tessa with all the love and gratitude he felt. The small crowd erupted in applause, but Bennett barely heard them. All his focus was on the woman in his arms, his wife, the person who had fixed his crooked bow tie, and somehow fixed his entire life in the process. The reception was held in a nearby restaurant, the same Italian place where Bennett had taken Tessa on their first real date. Marco had outdone himself with the food, and the wine flowed freely. Speeches were made, toasts were given, and through it all, Bennett could not stop smiling, During their first dance as husband and wife, Tessa rested her head on Bennett's shoulder and sighed contentedly. "This is perfect," she murmured. "You are perfect," Bennett corrected. "We are perfect together," Tessa amended, and Bennett could not argue with that. They honeymooned in Italy, spending 2 weeks exploring Florence and Tuscany. They ate incredible food, drank amazing wine, visited museums and churches and vineyards. But more than the activities, they cherished the time together, the ability to be present with each other without the demands of work constantly intruding. One afternoon, as they sat in a cafe overlooking a rolling hillside of grapevines, Tessa brought up something that had been on her mind. "I have been thinking about the future," she said. "About children." Bennett reached across the table to take her hand. "What about them? I want them. But I also do not want to give up my career. Is that selfish?" "No," Bennett said firmly. "It is not selfish to want both, and you can have both, Tessa. We will figure it out together. We can hire help. I can adjust my schedule. We will make it work." "You are sure?" "I am sure. Besides, our children are going to need at least one parent who can help them with science homework." "That is definitely going to be you," Tessa laughed. "Fair point." When they returned from their honeymoon, they moved into a new house together. It was smaller than Bennett's penthouse, but felt more like a home, with a yard and a neighborhood full of families. Tessa set up a home office where she could work when needed, and Bennett made sure he left the office at a reasonable hour most nights. Tessa's research continued to flourish. The treatment she had been developing showed remarkable promise in trials, and within a year, it was approved for use. Watching her present her findings at a major medical conference, Bennett felt a surge of pride so intense it was almost painful. This was his wife, changing lives and pushing the boundaries of science. When she came off stage, he was there waiting with flowers. Tessa threw her arms around his neck, laughing with joy and relief. "You did it," Bennett said. "I am so proud of you." "We did it," Tessa corrected. "Your company funded this research. Your support made it possible." "You are the one who did the actual work," Bennett pointed out. "Team effort," Tessa insisted, and Bennett kissed her to show he agreed. A year and a half into their marriage, Tessa discovered she was pregnant. They had been trying for several months, and the positive test was cause for celebration and terror in equal measure. Bennett held Tessa while she cried happy tears, then cried a few of his own. "We are going to be parents," Tessa said, wonder in her voice. "We are going to be parents," Bennett repeated. "Our child is going to be so loved. And hopefully inherit your height and my brains," Tessa joked. "I will take any combination," Bennett said, "as long as they are healthy." The pregnancy was not easy. Tessa dealt with severe morning sickness for the first trimester and was put on bed rest for the last month due to complications. Bennett took time away from work to care for her, bringing her meals and books and keeping her company during the long, boring days of mandatory rest. "I feel useless," Tessa complained one afternoon, frustrated with her inability to work or even move around much. "You are growing a human being," Bennett reminded her. "That is the opposite of useless. I miss my lab. I miss feeling productive." "You are being productive in the most important way possible." Bennett sat on the edge of their bed and took her hand. "I know this is hard, but you are doing an amazing job." When Tessa went into labor 3 weeks before her due date, Bennett tried to stay calm for her sake. But inside he was terrified. What if something went wrong? What if he lost her or the baby? The labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly 18 hours. Bennett stayed by Tessa's side the entire time, holding her hand, coaching her breathing, telling her how strong and amazing she was. When their daughter finally arrived, small but healthy, Bennett wept openly. "She is perfect," Tessa said, exhausted but radiant as she held their baby girl. "Look at her, Bennett. We made her." Bennett looked at his daughter, so tiny and fragile in Tessa's arms, and felt his entire world shift once again. This small person was dependent on them for everything. It was overwhelming and wonderful. They named her Caroline Mathison, after Bennett's grandmother and Tessa's mother. Caroline was a good baby as far as babies went, though those first few months were exhausting for both new parents. Bennett took paternity leave, something almost unheard of for a CEO, and threw himself into learning how to change diapers and give bottles and soothe a crying infant. "You are good at this," Tessa observed one night as Bennett walked Caroline around the nursery, bouncing her gently to help her sleep. "I am terrified I am going to break her," Bennett admitted. "You are not going to break her. You are a natural." "I do not know about that, but I am trying." That is all any parent can do. Try their best and hope it is enough. As Caroline grew, she brought joy and chaos into their lives in equal measure. Tessa returned to work part-time, and Bennett adjusted his schedule to be home more. They hired a nanny to help during work hours, but both parents were hands-on, determined to be present for their daughter's milestones. Caroline said her first word at 10 months, "Dada," which made Bennett cry with pride and made Tessa laugh at his emotional reaction. She took her first steps at 13 months, wobbling between her parents in their living room. Every tiny accomplishment felt like a miracle. On Caroline's second birthday, Bennett and Tessa hosted a party in their backyard. As Bennett watched Tessa help Caroline blow out her candles, he was struck by the fullness of his life. His wife, his daughter, his career, all of it combining into something rich and meaningful. That night after Caroline was in bed and the party cleanup was done, Bennett and Tessa sat on their back porch with glasses of wine. "Remember when we first met?" Tessa asked, nestled against Bennett's side. "How could I forget? You fixed my bow tie." "I cannot believe that is how our story started. Such a small thing." "Small things can change everything," Bennett said. That small gesture led to a conversation, which led to a dance, which led to coffee and dinner and falling in love. One small thing, and suddenly my entire life was different. "Better?" Tessa asked. "Infinitely better," Bennett confirmed. "You are my everything, Tessa, you and Caroline. I did not know I was looking for you, but you are exactly what I needed." "I love you," Tessa said, tilting her face up for a kiss. "I love you too, always." 3 years later, they welcomed a son, Benjamin Thomas Mathison, who had Bennett's blue eyes and Tessa's dark hair. Caroline was thrilled to be a big sister, helping to pick out clothes and toys for her baby brother. The house was louder and messier and more chaotic than ever, and Bennett loved every minute of it. Mathison Biotech continued to thrive under Bennett's leadership, but he had learned to delegate more, to trust his team and take time for his family. He coached Caroline's soccer team. He attended Benjamin's preschool performances. He made it home for family dinners most nights. Tessa's career flourished as well. She published papers, won awards, and was recognized as one of the leading researchers in her field. She managed to balance motherhood and her work, though some days were harder than others. Bennett made sure she knew how proud he was of everything she accomplished. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Bennett took Tessa back to the hotel rooftop where he had proposed. He had arranged for the same setup, string lights and a table for two, though the meal was served by a different catering company this time. "This is incredibly romantic," Tessa said, looking around with shining eyes. "I cannot believe you remembered all the details." "I remember everything about that night," Bennett said. "It was one of the most important nights of my life." They danced under the stars just like they had a decade before, and Bennett marveled at how much had changed, while the core of their relationship remained the same. They still made each other laugh. They still challenged and supported each other. They were still deeply, completely in love. "What are you thinking?" Tessa asked, noticing his faraway expression. "I am thinking about bow ties," Bennett admitted. Tessa laughed. "Random, not random. I was thinking about how I wore a crooked bow tie to a gala 10 years ago, and a beautiful stranger fixed it. And now here we are, married for a decade with 2 amazing children. It all started with you reaching out to adjust my tie." "I did not know what I was starting," Tessa said softly. "Neither did I, but I am so grateful you did it, that you saw me and saw something worth fixing. You were never broken, Bennett, just a little crooked, like your tie, and you straightened me out." "We straightened each other out," Tessa corrected. "That is what love does. It helps us be better versions of ourselves." Bennett pulled her closer, breathing in the scent of her perfume, feeling the solid warmth of her in his arms. "I would search for you in every crowd," he said. "In every life, in every timeline, I would always find you." "You do not have to search anymore," Tessa said. "I am right here, always." They kissed as the city lights sparkled below them, 2 people who had found each other in the chaos of a crowded gala and built something beautiful together. Their story had started with a simple gesture of kindness, a correction to a crooked bow tie, but it had grown into something profound and lasting. Years continued to pass, filled with the ordinary moments that make up a life. School plays and business trips, family vacations and late-night conversations. Caroline grew into a thoughtful teenager, interested in environmental science. Benjamin became a creative, energetic boy who loved building things. Bennett and Tessa navigated the challenges of parenting and careers, and maintaining their relationship through it all. On their 20th anniversary, their children threw them a surprise party. Friends and family gathered to celebrate, sharing stories about the couple who had somehow made it work despite busy careers and demanding schedules. "The secret is simple," Bennett said when asked to give a speech. "Find someone who fixes your bow tie and never let them go. Find someone who sees you, really sees you, and loves what they find. I found that person 20 years ago at a gala, and every single day since then has been a gift." Tessa stood beside him, her hand in his, tears in her eyes. "What he said," she added with a laugh. "Though I would add that partnership is key. We built this life together, supporting each other's dreams and working through challenges as a team. That is what makes it work." Later that night, after the guests had left and their children were in bed, Bennett and Tessa stood in their bedroom, helping each other undress after the long day. 20 years, Tessa mused as Bennett unzipped her dress. "Can you believe it? Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like we have always been together." "I know what you mean." Tessa turned to face him, her expression tender. "Thank you, Bennett, for everything, for building this life with me. Thank you for taking a chance on me, for seeing past the CEO title to the man underneath." "That man is pretty special," Tessa said, reaching up to straighten Bennett's collar, a gesture that had become habit over the years. Bennett caught her hand and kissed her palm. "I love you, Tessa Mathison, more than I can ever properly express. I love you too. More than bow ties and galas and everything in between." They laughed together, these 2 people who had found each other in the most unlikely way and created something extraordinary. Their love story had started with a simple touch, a correction to something askew, but it had grown into a partnership that had weathered 20 years and would weather 20 more. As they climbed into bed that night, Bennett pulled Tessa close, her head resting on his chest the way it had that first night she stayed over all those years ago. He thought about the path that had led them here, all the small moments and big decisions that had shaped their lives. If he had not attended that gala, if his bow tie had not been crooked, if Tessa had not been bold enough to reach out and fix it, if he had not searched for her face in the crowd, So many small things that could have gone differently, but had instead aligned perfectly to bring them together. "Hey, Bennett," Tessa said sleepily. "Yeah, promise me we will keep doing this, building our life together, finding each other in crowded rooms, fixing each other's metaphorical bow ties." "I promise," Bennett said, kissing the top of her head. "Every single day for the rest of our lives." And he meant it, because that was what love was in the end. Showing up for each other day after day, adjusting what was crooked and celebrating what was right. It was searching for your person's face in a crowded room and feeling your heart settle when you found them. It was the comfort of knowing that no matter what challenges came, you would face them together. The city lights glowed beyond their bedroom window, and somewhere out there, other couples were having their own first meetings, their own moments of connection that might change everything. But for Bennett and Tessa, their story was already written, already lived, already perfect in all its imperfect moments. They had found each other at a gala 20 years ago when she corrected his bow tie, and he searched for her face the entire evening. And they would keep finding each other, over and over, for all the years to come. That was their promise, their vow, their forever. In the morning they would wake up and do it all again. Make breakfast for their children, go to work, come home, share their days. The mundane magic of a life built together. But right now, in this moment, they simply held each other and felt grateful for a crooked bow tie and the brave woman who had fixed it, setting in motion a love story that would last a lifetime.